I knew I couldn't fail. And it's a line that I've used with you and Taylor, through the years. What would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? And failing wasn't an option because I had to support myself. I couldn't go back home. So I just kept working. And I could never understand why people didn't do well at work because it was like, just work harder. My friends were at school. All I did was work. And it propelled me. One job propelled me into a new position. And then I was spotted, one of the jobs that I had, by CBS Records, which is now Sony Music. But they spotted me and hired me, and I just kept moving along. It was like the old work ethic. I just kept working harder and harder, and it paid off.
Welcome to the Early Podcast, where we interview the best and the brightest who've built the world's most innovative companies. Hosted by me, Max Crowley. Tune in weekly for new episodes, and please, please, please like, subscribe, and share. And now for today's episode. Let's go. All right, Jay Crowley, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me, Max.
So you were obviously my mom.
Yes.
And you're wonderful, and it's Mother's Day, and I
Thank you.
love you. And I thought we should do a podcast together.
Wow, I'm going to be in tears already.
Michael Burl actually suggested this originally, so shout out to
Wow.
Burl. Yeah.
Okay, so we know he'll watch.
Yes. We'll at least get one viewer. All right. From the beginning, you're born in the Chicago suburbs. This is a time where sort of the suburbs are beginning in the Chicagoland area. Where did you grow up exactly, and where did your parents live before that?
So they grew up in Chicago, and we lived in a suburb outside of Chicago till I was about 7. And then they built a house a little bit further. I was 7 when we left. And they were one of the first people of their family to venture out of the city. And it was shocking to the relatives. They'd spend the weekend when they'd visit because it was so far. And now it's a 20-minute ride. So it was a big deal that our family kind of migrated out of the city. And then I grew up in the suburbs. Mount Prospect was the town I lived in. So stayed there till I was about 16.
All right. So my grandfather, your father, struggled with mental health issues.
Yes.
That created a lot of instability at home. What was it like growing up around that chaos?
At the time, we didn't know what it was. We just thought, well, it was just chaos. And now we probably would realize that he was manic. It was bipolar, but he was undiagnosed and self-medicated with alcohol, and he was very violent. He came from a Polish family. He was the youngest of 5, and he was very disconnected from them. It was very hard. Lots of really highs and a lot of lows in our household. So it was difficult, and it was all I really knew. Looking back on it, I think I even realized when I was living through it.
Is there a vivid memory that maybe shaped your independence that would kind of come to something that you embodied for the rest of your life?
I think a need to leave, a need to get out of that situation. There was a time when Grandma tried to leave my dad and just couldn't pull the trigger. It was the times, it was the late 60s, and it was very hard for women to do that. She wasn't working at the time. So she stayed, and all I could see was leaving. And I just kind of fought to just get out. And I didn't really think about how hard that would be and what might happen to me. It was just like fight or flight. I knew I had to leave. I knew I had to get away from that setting.
How old were you when you ended up leaving home?
So I left when I was 17. I graduated in January, early, because again, I had to do everything fast. I wanted to get out of my situation. And so I immediately started working full time, and I used to really go head to head with him. And we had a fight, and I said, that's it, I'm leaving. And he was like, fine. I think what really triggered it was that once we went to work full time for your Uncle Jeff, my brother and I, we had to pay room and board. And it was $60 a month, which I remember vividly. And I was like, there's no way I'm giving you a dime. And so I left. I kind of did it. It was in anger, and I really never looked back. I never really doubted myself. So I left when I was turning 18 that summer.
Was there any thought of college, or was that just not something that was possible?
My friends went to college, which in a way made it easier for me to just put my head down and work. But I didn't get a lot of encouragement to do that. My brother was 3 years older, and he went to school. I saw him struggle. He paid his own way, and really didn't get any help from my parents. And it wasn't even that they couldn't afford it. My father, he didn't really want us to have much more than he had. And so he was like, you want to go? Just go. For some reason, I was very afraid of leaving to do that. I could leave and get an apartment, but to leave and go away to school, it was just overwhelming to me. And so I didn't go. And it's still a regret I have that I didn't try harder.
You made a lot out of yourself, even in spite of that.
Living with regret is fruitless.
All right. So what did you do first when you left home?
I started working when I was 13. But when I left, I got a job working in the record business. And I didn't even know what it was at the time, ABC Records. Grandma answered a want ad, and they were physical want ads in the newspaper. And she made an appointment for me to interview for a full-time job. She set it up, and I went and got the job.
What was the record business? Because for most people listening, they probably don't know what it is. You don't know what it is.
So artists sign up on labels. There was Columbia Records, Epic Records, Warner Brothers. There was tons of them. And ABC Records was one of the labels. And we sold all the Jimmy Buffett records, and Shaka Khan, Rufus was her band. Jim Croce, which is a name you probably don't know, but he was on our label. I can't remember all of it. Three Dog Night. I mean, a lot of bands. And so we sold those albums and 45s, which were small albums that had one song on one side and a song on the other side. And that's my first job, was an order taker. And I just sat on the phone all day long and took orders from record stores. So they would buy direct from us. And we distributed all those artists, records.
And probably at that time, majority of music was sold through record stores.
Exactly.
Walmart didn't sell music. Obviously, there's nothing online.
It was all physical. It was in mom and pop, we called them, shops. So Max's Records shop. There was chains. There was like Kmart and, those chains, they sold them. Yeah, it was really a very boutique business. It was very interesting.
What do you remember from the first few years of working?
I knew I couldn't fail. And it's a line that I've used with you and Taylor, through the years. What would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? And failing wasn't an option because I had to support myself. I couldn't go back home. So I just kept working. And I could never understand why people didn't do well at work, because it was like, just work harder. My friends were at school. All I did was work. And it propelled me. One job propelled me into a new position. And then I was spotted, one of the jobs that I had, by CBS Records, which is now Sony Music. But they spotted me and hired me, and I just kept moving along. It was like the old work ethic. I just kept working harder and harder, and it paid off.
What was there a moment when you were like, "Oh my God, I'm doing this, like I'm kicking ass"?
Every position, every promotion I got, I just would pinch myself. But I think the biggest step for me was when I went to work for CBS Records, and that was Elvis Costello, Bruce Springsteen, Barbra Streisand. I mean, we had the lion's share of the business. We had all the big artists, and they gave me a sales gig. And at first I had an inside job, sales job, and then they put me on the street. And I was like 20 years old, 21. I mean, the pay was great. I got a daily per diem so that I could buy people lunch and travel. I was like, this is insane. Who needs college? So that was a pivotal time for me.
And probably where you start to embody a bit of the eat what you kill. So that's the first time you have sort of a commission sales job.
Yes.
Which becomes probably what you're great at throughout your life.
Fantastic. I mean, it was just that was my ticket. And I won every sales contest. I made every quota. Again, I didn't know any different. I just kept pushing forward. And the more they tempted me with, the more I went after it.
What's one of your good stories of winning a sales contest in those days?
Probably after I met Dad, Jim, Annie was coming out. The movie came out, and we had the soundtrack. And so they did a national contest. And one store could win a trip to Hawaii, all expenses paid, and one sales rep. We had 100 sales reps across the country. And I won. So it was a week for two in Maui. And my client won because she had done an unbelievable display in her store. So we each won, which was amazing. But I also won Sales Rep of the Year one year. And I was the first woman that had won that. So.
I mean, you dressed like Annie for that.
I did. Yeah, you're right.
I remember that.
I did. I dressed like Annie, and I had a merchandiser that worked for me. And he helped me out, and he dressed like the dog. And we went and visited stores. We went to Misericordia. It was crazy.
But it wasn't all gravy. I mean, it wasn't all great. You dealt with sexism. You dealt with other things. I mean, this is like the early 80s in the entertainment industry. You're very young. Yeah. This is not all easy
roses,
street.
Right. For sure. That was like the height of the record business. I just kind of hit it at the right time for good and bad reasons. It was a lot of money, a lot of drugs. Not that I necessarily partook in that, but
not necessarily.
Just, but there was a lot going on. It was pretty crazy. And they started doing the sexual harassment seminars, and it was nuts. I mean, there was just excess of everything back then. They would take 1,000 people. We went to England one year. It was nuts. It was a very chaotic time.
How did you push through those challenges? Because again, you're kind of all speed ahead, no real formal training. Right. You're kind of just taking everything as it comes. Yeah. How did you face down challenges that you faced around that time?
I just kind of forged through. I needed to manage my career. I needed to keep making money. I don't know. I just kind of did it. It was just like stick-to-itiveness,
How did you meet Dad?
He worked for one of my accounts. For some reason, they gave me a lot of accounts that were very difficult to manage. Again, I would take those on as a challenge, and I always won through. I think in sales, people like to work with people they like. And, I just made myself very likable and kind of met them where they were. And he worked for a big account of mine. And I was there like 3 or 4 times a week because they did so much business with me. And he worked there. And so we met and went to lunch.
Yes,
I saw him so.
He asked you out eventually?
Yes. Or I think I might have asked him out, actually.
Of course. All right. So then you become a mother.
Yes.
Not too long after that with me. 1986, I'm born. My sister, Taylor, who's here, she's born in 89. So you eventually step away from your career and go full-time on.
That job or that industry was so demanding. We had shows and parties. And as fun as that was, it was constant. In a given week, I could have been out 5 nights a week, maybe 7. It was crazy. And it was very, very difficult. As much as I loved it and thrived on it, when you were born, it was very difficult for me to go back. I mean, I took a 6-month leave of absence, and not that child rearing is not a piece of cake, because it isn't, but I couldn't do both. It was very hard for me. But then I struggled to stay home too, because it was with work, you have a sense of accomplishment. You make a quota, or you get an award, or you win an account.
Make money.
You're constantly being rewarded. With motherhood, it's different. Your every day blends into the other. I've told you guys, I would stand at the sink making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches saying, I don't think I can make one more. I might have to kill somebody. Being home was tough too. Giving all that up, that was a big thing for me.
Yeah, I remember there's some story where you were like washing the floor in the kitchen or something, and you were like having a similar thought about motherhood.
Oh yeah, I'm sure I had them all over the house.
So wait, one thing I do want to touch on, there was a moment where you got offered a chance to move to New York.
Yes.
And that could have been a really pivotal change for you. This is before you met Dad.
Before I met Dad.
And Grandma said no. Interestingly enough, I've now moved around a lot, and you've been super supportive.
And I've tried to say no, but yes, I've been super supportive. Yes, I was getting antsy because I had kind of reached my limit. I was a sales rep and I was doing great, but I was getting kind of antsy. I had won a trip to New York. I know I sound like I'm bragging. To me, it was like so simple. So I came to New York for Pink Floyd when they did the Wall album, and it was at Madison Square Garden, and they actually built the wall for the whole show, which was just insane.
And the show ends and it's
the wall. I seem to remember like a flying helicopter thing. It was just nuts. Anyway, I was here and they said, we want to send you into the home office, which was BlackRock, and we want you to interview for a job. And I was like, great. They put me up at the plaza and I interviewed, and they wanted me to be, they basically offered me the job it was like an entry level, inside position, working with new artists, getting their albums ready, getting them ready to launch. And it would have been a fantastic opportunity. And I had, my aunt, your great aunt, lived here. And I thought this could be great because I'd have family here. It would have been a cut and pay, but really,
Yeah, but you would have crushed it.
I think I would have, because it was just like right up my alley. But I had an allegiance to my mother. If I left, what that would mean to her still being at home with my father. And I was like, I knew that she told me how hard that would be for her if I left. And so I waited out and decided to stay. So
a couple of, pivotal decisions where you had to put your career, on the side, right?
On
On
the
hold,
side, right.
Motherhood, grandma sort of objecting to you moving to New York. When did you decide, all right, I got to get back in the game? Because now, if we fast forward a bit, 93, 94, 95, this is when you start to say, all right, I need to work again.
I had a couple of side hustles, and I bought a little business at one point called Child's Play, and I saw a little want ad again, and it was $3,000 for this company that these women had kind of curated kids items from all over the country, and then they did home parties. And so they ran this ad. It was $3,000. I bought it, and I put my own spin on it, and I did that for a little while. And I don't even know how much money I made, but I just needed that, shot in the arm. So then when Taylor was in first grade, because you were 3 years ahead, she was in first grade, and my brother was selling franchises to Quiznos. And he kind of talked us into, sadly, purchasing one. The timing was not great because they were a new concept in Chicago, and we were one of the first handful that opened. So it was a struggle. I had rose-colored glasses. I thought, oh, yeah, I can kind of sit back and maybe not be there so much and do the marketing part of it and manage things. That wasn't the case.
Yeah, so you decide to open a franchise of a Quiznos sandwich shop.
Right.
And now especially we kind of know, you own one franchise unit. It's tough. You're paying them royalties on sales.
Yes.
You have to follow a lot of their sort of rules and restrictions, the framework that they set up. You're eking out probably very tight margins in the best case scenario. And really the only people that make money on as franchisees are people that have a ton of these stores and have been able to scale that. And you go at it without any experience in it, rose-colored glasses to open a franchise and probably put all the money that you guys had into it.
Oh my God. Yeah. We used our house as a cash register, and we took that equity.
Yeah, so explain that, because you bought a house in 1983 for $80,000, or
it was 1984. We were married a year, and it was $110,000.
You sell it in 2021,
right? For $570,
and you still owed money on it.
Yes. But we don't like living with regret. Yes, we made,
But I think it emphasizes you guys were doing everything possible to make it happen, right? You're eking out, you're hustling, dad's working sales job after sales job. You're continuing to reinvent yourself, trying to get a shot at making something, continuing to kind of remortgage the house, pulling money out.
Yeah, not the best decisions.
But, I think, I've taken some risk in my life, and I think I've probably learned a lot from that. And also learned, I remember coming home and dad had lost his job or whatever. And those being just like rough moments where I was like, and again, it wasn't that I never judged, when people ask me about our family, I'm like, it was a team effort. Like we were in it together.
Yeah.
I just remember those moments so distinctly where I was like, God, I never want to be in this position. And again, it's also hard to make that not be the case. Lots of people lose their jobs. Lots of people face hardship, but yeah, those are just distinct moments for me where, again, it was never in a judgy way, but I want to try not to end up in this place.
Mistakes. Yeah, absolutely. My parents made a lot of those mistakes. Grandpa did the same exact thing. He took the equity from our house and opened a card shop, greeting card shop. It was like the craziest concept. And he lost all of it. He lost all the money. We didn't lose all our money, but we lost a lot.
All of it.
We were a little bit further ahead than where they were, but yeah. Anyway.
So you opened the Quiznos. It's a disaster from the beginning, right? You go to Colorado for training.
Right. Mandatory.
And it's like a snowstorm and grandpa dies.
Right. I had to go back. They made me go back. I had finished like a week, I think, of the training. And I was like, can I please just train back in Chicago for the balance of it? And they wouldn't let me. So I had to go back out. And you guys are young and dad's still traveling. And I'm realizing that this is not what I want. I was not a person who punched a clock, and I made my own schedule. I made my own plans. This was like shocking. And it was a grueling 5 years.
When did you start to figure out a bit on just the economics of even running a small business? Because I think that's also a muscle that's different for anyone when you start to say, okay, I've got food costs, I have labor costs, I have rent, I have utilities.
Right.
I need to manage a P&L or I'll have no idea what's going on with this business. I mean, how did you even start to learn just management of a unit like that?
It was like trial by fire. I mean, they also give you systems that you follow. They did. We did an inventory every week, and we knew if our food costs was higher than 20% that there was something wrong. There was either theft going on, or they were building the sandwiches too thick with meat. There were some things that we followed, some protocols, but it was trial by fire. We learned a lot. We lost a lot. The hiring, firing, I had never done any of that. I just did it like I did earlier on in my career. Just put my head down and just did it. Learned, taught myself how to do it.
What was probably the biggest learning from owning the Quiznos?
Oh boy, I don't think we were as prepared as we should have been. And I think that whole franchise world is very, very unique, and it's not for everybody. I mean, you are giving up a royalty and then the marketing fee. And if I remember right, it was like 10 or 11%. It's a lot of money that you're giving back. When you said, the only people that make money, if you have several of those units, it's the corporate office. That's who's making all the money. They're making all that, those fees. It's very difficult to make money.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe even making money on the food that they're selling as well. I mean, I know you're using Cisco for a lot of that, but Subway, I think, owns all of their own distribution
suppliers.
And whatnot. Suppliers, yeah. There's margin baked into everything for them to make money. How did you face those challenges? I mean, you had so many issues. You had people stealing from you that you trusted. You had issues with the landlord. You had issues with back taxes from the landlord. You had lawyers. I remember one time your tires got slashed.
They slashed all 4 of my tires. Yes, they did.
That must have been a disgruntled worker, right?
I had to be, because my car was right behind. My blue van was right behind.
Blue Plymouth Voyager.
Yes. Sheesh. Memory lane.
What was the moment where you were like, oh, I shouldn't have done this?
Oh my gosh. It came a couple years in. I was like, this is not going to work. The chain was not taking off in Chicago. So that was number one. People just couldn't wrap their head around that concept. It was an expensive sandwich, even though it was like premium meats, freshly sliced. It didn't matter. It was a hard pill for people to swallow, and that the brand just couldn't take off. So we were kind of doomed. I mean, none of the stores really did that great. And then we started seeing people sell their stores. And then it was like, okay, the writing's on the wall. This is never going to work. No matter how hard we work, no matter what we put into it, it's never going to pay off. So at what point do we just cut our losses and sell? And then interestingly, we lost a lot of money when we sold, but then the next owner, then things kind of picked up because they were 6 years in, 5-6 years in to Chicago. And then the second owner did really well. They made money. And then of course they crashed and closed up.
How much you end up losing, you think? On
Probably $100,000, maybe more.
Yeah.
But it was the tireless, efforts. It was like the work, the days, not being with you guys in the summer, putting you in camps. It was like we lost a lot, not just money.
So you end up, about 5 years you owned that?
5, yeah.
I mean, you're someone that has just continued to reinvent yourself. What's like sort of your mantra as you face down something that's just brand new and totally different than what you've done before?
I think just facing it head on, just doing it. I've just never been an idle person. I'm very curious, which I hope I think I've instilled in both you and Taylor. I just need to keep going and moving forward and exploring what's out there. Failing was not an option with any, and I don't even see Quiznos as a failure. I mean, I think it was a bad choice. We made the best of it. One of my best friends I made through Quiznos. We're still, friends. You and Taylor know him very well. There was still some good that came out of it. And really with everything, I think you have to look at the glass half full. I've kind of done that with all the challenges I've had.
Yeah, no regrets. You end up getting into real estate a few years after that. You do some other jobs. You're selling drapes and
for a while I did. In companies, actually. Yes.
You end up getting into real estate.
Yes.
What do you think are like one or two of the learnings from your career prior to real estate? Because real estate ends up being a journey you're still in 20 years later.
Right.
And have done really well and grown your business. And really, I mean, I think in a lot of ways, it was perfect for you, especially in sort of this chapter of your life, your mid 40s.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Late. Yes.
Late 40s. Yeah. Which is still wild that you were able to start a new career in your late 40s. That lasted 20 plus years already.
And Dad will say now, you should have done this sooner, but I don't know that I was ready for it. And I know what your question is going to be. You know, what led me to this? I think all the positions I've had have groomed me. And I think for most people, it's the same thing, have kind of groomed me to be in this role. I mean, I love helping people. I lead with integrity and honesty in everything I do. And I may not be the number one in my industry or in my market, but boy, I do it right. And nobody can ever take me to task on that. And I think that's why I've built a nice business for myself. I love what I do. And
you take care of people and you work your ass off.
I really do. I micromanage everything to a fault. I mean, I know there's somebody in my life who wants me to delegate, but I have to be present. Yeah.
I mean, the chip on your shoulder that you honed early at probably 15, 16, still there and still gnawing at you.
Yes.
All right. So you start the real estate career. And again, like everything, a lot of good stuff and also a bunch of challenges.
Yes.
So you started as an assistant.
Right. So a friend of mine sitting in the baseball field watching you play baseball with her son. And she's a big realtor at the time. And she said, well, now you sold your business. What are you going to do? And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I've been in sales my whole life. It's kind of what I love and what I'm good at. And she said, you should be a realtor. And I was like, nah, there's so many. And she's like, why don't you just come and be one of my assistants? She already had a full-time assistant, but that's how big she was. And she's like, just come and work a few days a week and see if you like it. And I was like, I think I will. So
little did she know she was letting a shark into the water.
Go on. So yes, I mean, I go in there, I'm like, this is a piece of cake. And so I was like, I got to get licensed. And she was very supportive. She knew what my story. And so I immediately got my license, and she had a small team, and she said, get your license and come on my team. And I am really not a great team player. I like to lead the team. And as I've said to you and Taylor, we're kind of launchers. We like to get out there and be the number one. And I struggled, and then she fired me 6 months later. It just didn't work. It was a bad deal we had. And she got really annoyed with me and kicked me off her team. And it was hard in the beginning. I was just kind of like, holy, this is crazy. And then I was like, you know what? I'm better. This is a good thing.
And I knew her well. I think you still have to give her credit and thanks for bringing you in and whatever else. And it was probably inevitable that you were going to have to go out on your own. Probably thought you were going to stay on the team longer than six months. So what was the deal that went so south?
Well,
and what was your cut with her? What was your split with her? So you're giving her...
I was giving her a lot. And some deals was 40% of my commission. And then she had this funky thing where, if she gave me a client to work with, then I had to keep giving her residual commission as long as I did deals with them, which nobody does that. But anyway, she was very successful at the time. So I had a listing, in a nutshell. I had a listing, and somebody called me off of the internet posting, and they wanted to buy the house. It was like a $900,000 house. And then she had a client that wanted to buy the same house. So now when you're on a team, we all kind of know about each other's clients. So she kind of knew too much about everything. It was tough. She wrote an offer, I wrote an offer, and it was a crazy transaction. And I wound up winning the bid. And she fired me because her client fired her.
Did you know at that time it was game over?
Doomed. Well, I went to my manager, my office, my managing broker, and I said, I need some help with this. I should be going to her, but she's in the deal. So he guided me, and he said, this is exactly what you should do. This is the legal way to handle this. And so I did it. I did exactly what he said. She was mad because she didn't get her way. And her client, she had promised her client that she was going to get that house because she knew she could bully me into letting her have it. And it didn't work. So she got fired from her client. I got fired from the team.
The rest is history. What did you?
She hated me forever.
What did you think? You guys never really reconciled.
No, she wanted to. It was so weird.
What did you think at that moment when you got fired from that team?
I did think that might be the kiss of death for me.
Like the real estate was not going to work.
Yeah, even though I knew I had done everything the right way, it was sour grapes for her. She was annoyed because she didn't get the deal and lost $1 million client. But I was thinking, God, this is terrible.
When did you sort of have your next, okay, maybe the real estate thing is going to work? Like you get into it, you get your license, you have this, sort of big fallout. Now you're on your own. You're like, I don't know if I can make this. When's the next moment where you're like, you know what, I can do this on my own. This is actually a better situation for me.
It came pretty quickly because I put my head down and did open houses constantly. I mean, I had some clients, some friends were moving, but the way to really build a real estate career is to sit open houses. And so I just did it. Every weekend I could, I just went and sat open houses because the goal is then to meet, you're in front of a potential client, you win them over, and now they're your client and you're selling them a house. Or selling their house. So I just kept at it. And I got Rookie of the Year the first year because I did $3 million. So then I was like, well, I can do this on my own. I don't need a team. That was like, some agents they're lucky if they can do $1 million in a year. So then I was like, yeah, I'm good. I can do this. And I did it. Every year, I don't think I've ever had a year where I've made less than the year before. And again, I'm a single practitioner. I don't have a team, but that's okay. It's been great. I mean, it came at a time you were in college. Taylor was coming up on college. I pretty much paid for a lot of your Greek life, all that money, your house, your housing, Taylor's housing. I was paying for that. So to me, that was a win. That was huge for me to be able to do that.
You've had all this experience in doing these large scale transactions, whether it was, the early days of hustling at the record business to like super small transactions when you were like running businesses out of the house or selling drapes or whatever else or stamps. And now all of a sudden real estate, multi-million-dollar transactions. What are your kind of couple of principles when it comes to sales, business development, and working with clients?
I think, again, the leading with integrity, I think you have to be honest. I mean, and I say to people sometimes, would you like me to be honest or do you want me to, fudge the truth here and apologize later? I think I've always been incredibly organized, very hands-on, very honest and straightforward. And I think in every job I've had, that kind of shines through. I think that people can, they can see a fake. I'm proud to say I have a very good reputation in the industry. So, and I, probably 90%, maybe even 95% now, given the market, 95% of my business is referrals and past clients. I'm not setting open houses as much to get new clients. It's all repeat business or referrals from family and friends.
When you think about managing your day to day, you're someone that's really organized. I think the details matter. You're on top of your calendar. I mean, what are some of those components that you think help kind of drive your success?
Well, all of those things. I think being organized is one of the most important things. I am really into the details, maybe to a fault, but I do have some good systems in place and I stay really focused. I don't miss deadlines. I mean, I am really on top of things.
Yeah, I mean, you're also 24/7. I mean, you never.
I know, and I have that luxury. I don't have little kids at home. I love it so much that I don't mind if I have to take a call at 9:00 or do paperwork at 10:00. I mean, it doesn't bother me. A lot of times realtors are working when other people are not. Sometimes I work harder on Saturday and Sunday than I do during the week. But I like that. I like the flexibility of that. I've never been a person, really my whole career, except for Quiznos, that I, had to punch a clock. I've never been able to do that.
We talked a lot about your career. You've also obviously been a mom, a great mom.
Thank you.
And what sort of stands out as maybe a proud parenting moment as you think about, almost 38 years with me and 35 years with Taylor?
I would say probably the fact that you both went to college and graduated. You were the first two on my side of the family, first two kids to go to college. So for me not going and for Uncle Jeff barely getting through,
He didn't have a degree.
No, he was just short though of getting it. But that was really important to me. I wanted you to have a successful career in school, through high school, both of you. And then for you to go to college, you both got into the Greek life. You both had management roles within Greek life. You explored, you did so much in college. I would call it like a healthy college experience. And then to graduate, it was spectacular for me. And I think for Dad too. But given that I didn't go, it was really exciting for me. So that was a really proud moment when each of you graduated.
Now I've talked about it, a few times, even on the pod or publicly, of you helping me land the Uber gig.
Right.
Again, the quick version of that is I was trying to convince them to give me the job at Uber. It was months. They kept kind of messing around. And what do you sort of remember from that time and from, your final advice, which was basically, turning the screws on them a bit?
Right. So, I mean, part of it was the mama bear in me saying, you need to give my son that opportunity. Because I knew how hard you were working to get a job offer. But then the other side of it was like, you know what? You were up for a promotion with Accenture. And even though that was, a dream job of yours, but you were going places. And so, then I thought, well, you're young. What have you got to lose? And I probably reflected back on, my days and the opportunities I turned down. It was just kind of like, wait a second, you're giving up a lot. I mean, you're giving up a sure thing for this Uber that you don't really know that much about. I mean, we didn't know if that was going to fail miserably.
For sure.
You didn't know if it was going to fail in the first 2 years, even year. I don't know about 2 years. And so then I was like, no, he needs to stand up for himself. He's going to give a lot up potentially. And so I just kind of flipped the switch and you did it and it worked. It was great. It was fantastic. And it was a life lesson for both of us.
Yeah. I mean, why do you think, because not every parent would have even been supportive, not that you would have been able to necessarily tell me what to do, but would have even been supportive of me quitting the Accenture job and going and working for an unknown startup. And then there was never even a moment of doubt, from you guys.
No, I guess I just believed in you, Dad and I both. And I felt this way for Taylor too. But I felt like even if it didn't work, you'd make the best of it and you'd move on to something else. I just believed that you'd make it happen, either that position or another one, whether Quiznos or Uber succeeded or not. I just felt like you had it in you to make a go of whatever you did.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that's also, you touched on it, but like no regrets.
Right.
You've been able to reinvent yourself time and time again. Even if something is a low, it helps make the next thing great. You've
never been afraid of work, neither of you guys. And I knew you had a successful career at college or experience at college. I knew you'd be okay. And you were, you're young. If you were 40, it would have been a different story, but you were in your 20s.
Yeah, early 20s, yeah, 24.
Yeah.
When you think about your legacy, both in working with the clients that you've worked with and as a parent, what do you want people to remember about you? I've
said this a couple of times now. I think the things that I've done in my life, I have done all my effort, my heart, integrity. I've been genuine about my life and intentional. And I feel like I'll leave this earth up a little bit better than when I started out. I think I've been impactful in a lot of ways with you guys, with other family members and friends. We never touched on the volunteering that I've done. I mean, I worked in the farmer's market for 20 years. And so I feel like I've been a pretty good person.
Yeah, I mean, maybe let's just touch on that quickly because you make the Facebook group for the neighborhood you live in. You plan the block parties. You crazy involved in church. I mean, there's never a moment that you're sitting still, and it's a combo of parenting, work, and then just being in the mix on things.
Right. Yeah, I love it. I thrive in it. The farmers market started out just kind of benign. I was on the committee for a few years and then it just one thing led to another. And pretty soon I was running it and we tripled the size and, doubled the vendors. It was crazy. So yeah, I love it.
If you could give one piece of advice to your 16, 17-year-old self, what would it be?
So it's what you always say to me, Mom, don't worry so much. I did worry back then. I was always worried about money. I was always worried about the next step. I did it, and some things I just did blindly, but I would say, don't worry, it'll be okay. If you do the right things and you're a good person, it'll be okay. I was just so young and naive about things. I worried. I'm a worrier.
All right, we're going to close with the lightning round. This is something that's new. So you got to just answer and don't give a lot of detail. I just want an answer on these. Okay?
Okay.
You good? You ready for it?
Yeah.
We're calling the early exit. Okay? That's what I call this, the lightning round. The early. Average lights out time. When do you go to bed?
10:30. 10:45. I usually watch Kimmel. His monologue. Then I go to bed.
At 8 years old, you swore you'd be?
A teacher.
What kind of a teacher?
I was so far from being a teacher. It wasn't even funny. But I wanted to be one.
Perfect morning breakfast. What's on your plate?
Well, my 8-year-old self said cookies and milk. But now it's a smoothie and yogurt and fruit and granola.
First dollar you ever earned?
I was 13 hand-making bows at the gift shop that Grandma worked at. And a little crank machine.
Favorite book?
Oh, wow. Well, the most recent is The Wedding People, but it's not like some literary thing.
That's all right.
I don't know.
Best quality in a romantic partner, I guess, Dad.
Does it have to be? Being your best friend.
Mentor who changed your trajectory?
I would change probably that first job. I told Taylor about it this morning. Jerry Elster. He was a sales rep, and he kind of mentored me and, guided me into moving forward with my career.
Okay. And then last one, best piece of advice you've ever received?
Oh, man, that should have been a
prompt.
Pardon?
Should have been a prompt.
Best piece of advice. Just be honest. I guess. I don't know. That's a tough one. And I need a little time for that.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for doing this, Mom. I love you.
I love you too.
Give me a hug.